Good afternoon. My name is Brooke Emery, and I'm the project manager at Caltrans for the District 11 Transit Only Lane Demonstration Project. And I am co-presenting today with Sarah Christensen, who is the project delivery manager at the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission for the Highway 1 Bus on Shoulder project. We're going to get started here a little bit early, it looks like, since the previous presentation is over. Feel free to type any questions you have into the Q&A section. Time permitting, Sarah and I would be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. The transit only lane project will be for bus on shoulder operations. This is in District 11 here in San Diego. It's an innovative, low-cost way to improve mobility. Operating in the shoulder will allow buses to bypass congestion, improve travel time reliability, and provide passengers 5 to 15 minutes of time savings per trip as a result of avoiding congestion. In addition, minimal physical improvements are required for bus on shoulder operations, so we leverage existing assets. Most of the work is related to traffic and intelligent transportation systems with some highway design. Converting freeway shoulders to transit-only lanes is not a new concept. There are many in operation. Some of the ones referenced on this were projects with the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority, the Washington Department of Transportation, the I-680 Bus on Shoulder project with the Contra Costa Transit Authority, and the Bus on Shoulder project out on Highway 1 in Santa Cruz. In December 2005, District 11 performed a 2-year demonstration pilot to evaluate the effectiveness of using the freeway shoulder on transit lanes on an 8-mile stretch of our own State Route 52. The purpose of this project is to improve travel time reliability of the Metropolitan Transit System Rapid bus operations. Rapid is the Metro Transit System bus route here in San Diego that will be utilizing our transit-only lane. The pilot done in 2005 was deemed a success, but it was mainly measured quantitatively through interviews with bus drivers and passengers. This pilot is needed not only to demonstrate the operational feasibility of converting existing shoulders for transit-only lane operations, but also to test or utilize the vehicle-to-infrastructure technology to support those safe maneuvers along the shoulders and adjacent to entrance ramps and the core areas. And it's to determine potential operational, enforcement, and maintenance requirements for future deployments, and to set or recommend operational guidelines. This demonstration project will have a 3-year operational period. It will include ramp metering safety enhancements and use state-of-the-art technology for driver assistance. Since this is a demonstration project, all improvements are anticipated to be removed after the completion of the pilot, except for the concrete barrier modifications we'll be making. SANDAG, who is our regional NPO here in San Diego, has committed to working with Caltrans to return the freeway to the pre-demonstration condition at the end of this demonstration project.
Hi, Brooke. Sorry to interrupt. We're hearing a lot of background noise. Is there a fan or anything like that that's close by?
No, but I can try to talk into my microphone a little more. Is this better? Okay. So the pilot is proposed along Interstate 805 and along State Route 94, westbound into downtown San Diego. Interstate 805 is one of San Diego's most congested commuter corridors. It has a strong directional distribution, northbound in the morning and southbound in the evening. The pilot will allow Metropolitan Transit System rapid vehicles to operate in the transit-only lanes along a 7-mile portion within selected segments of both of these routes. The transit-only lane is located at the outside shoulder along Interstate 805 and the connectors, and in the median shoulder westbound State Route 94. The work's going to be done in phases. 2 phases actually. Phase 1 will install the technology infrastructure, the driver assistance technology, and vehicle to infrastructure within the entire limits of the pilot, which are shown in yellow and blue. This phase will also complete all structural section changes and barrier modifications. It will provide signage and pavement markings and delineation, though, only in the yellow portion. And then phase 2 will come back and expand that operation of the pilot to include the blue portions, which really will be just adding and modifying signage and pavement markings and delineation in that area. We are currently in construction of phase 1. We had scheduled 135 working days with an expected construction completion date of February 10th, 2021. Although it may be delayed slightly, our contractor is struggling right now to procure some sign poles in time. But within 90 days from the start of the demonstration, an assessment will be made on whether to initiate the second phase of the project. Although if the steering committee all concurs, phase 2 could begin as early as 1 month after phase 1 operation. And that would continue through the remainder of the 3-year demonstration. The operational parameters were created on when the rapid bus could use or not use the transit-only lane. So for example, they can use the transit-only lane when the following conditions are met. The shoulder has to be signed for MTS bus lane. It can operate only during peak hours of 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the north and west direction, and 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the south direction. The freeway speeds have to be below 35 miles per hour. They have to be rapid vehicles operated by MTS or its contracted operators, and they will not exceed 35 miles per hour while operating in the transit-only lane. And when they are in the transit-only lane, they're restricted to 15 miles per hour faster than the adjacent general purpose lane. So for example, if the general traffic is traveling at 5 miles per hour, the rapid vehicles would operate no faster than 20 miles per hour. In addition, buses operating in the transit-only lane must yield to emergency response vehicles, enforcement and maintenance vehicles, disabled vehicles, large debris, and they will not be permitted to utilize the transit-only lane during non-peak hours or during periods of rain or when any visible wetness on the roadway is present. To minimize impact to enforcement and transit operations, we also provided additional funding allocated to Maze and Freeway Service Patrol to assist and remove stalled vehicles and obstructions in support of the pilot. The Metropolitan Transit System has trained the trainers who will train the bus operators. Training these bus drivers will address the pilot requirements as well as how to handle obstructions such as stalled vehicles and vehicle enforcement. Classroom training for those bus drivers has begun, and system testing and field training is anticipated to begin soon. It is emphasized that the decision to use the shoulder is always at the discretion of the driver, though, and the driver is directed to yield to anything that is in the shoulder. The Traffic Management Center here in District 11 has been essential at helping deliver this project. Without their efforts and active participation in the process and in PDTs, this project would have not had the success it's reached to date. Connected vehicle technology is being deployed to enable the buses to request signal priority to navigate around the ramps. With the ramp metering transit priority system, the roadside processor at each ramp meter is responsible for processing the bus location and speed information to vehicles are held at the ramp meter to allow the bus to travel unimpeded. It's anticipated that the rapid buses will operate either in the transit-only lane or an auxiliary lane. So when an auxiliary lane is present, technically there is no transit-only lane. But the buses will have the ability to cross the board at these locations. And up to 4 buses per peak hour are anticipated to operate in that transit-only lane. So that's 1 every 15 minutes with up to 16 trips per peak period. In addition to the transit priority system, signage improvements will be made at each interchange ramp where the transit-only lane is on the outside shoulder. The signing improvements include static signs alerting drivers that a bus may merge into the ramp or an auxiliary lane from the transit-only lane. Blank out signs will be placed at the ramp meter signals showing graphic bus icons with either merging or crossing or reading bus merging or bus crossing. And signing improvements will be made along the main lanes of Interstate 805 and State Route 94, indicating when transit-only lanes for bus on shoulder operations are to begin and end. With regards to the signage, we did need to go to the CTCDC, which is the California Traffic Control Device Committee, to get approval to experiment using this signage, since it is a non-standard traffic control device. Next steps we had include finalizing the testing of the ramp system, conducting the training for the bus operators. We have a couple more agreements we need to sign, finalize our communications outreach, and then we'll be opening to the public. I will now turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Brooke. My name is Sarah Christensen. Let me just get a little situated here. With the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission. And here today to talk about our Highway 1 Bus on Shoulder project that we've been working on implementing for the past couple of years. So just to paint a little picture of Santa Cruz County, we're a small county that's tucked up in the north edge of Monterey Bay. We have about 280,000 people, and we're somewhat spread out between two population centers. As you can see on the map on the right side, we have Watsonville and Santa Cruz, and a lot of the affordable housing is down in Watsonville and the jobs are in Santa Cruz. So what we have is we really only have one cross-county route that folks have to travel between Watsonville and Santa Cruz, and that's Highway 1. And for this reason, the corridor experiences some really severe congestion. And it's a 4-lane facility. It experiences more than 100,000 vehicles per day travel along Highway 1. And it's really the only route at this time. The RTC, we own a branch railroad that we purchased a couple years ago. And we're working on developing a transit system on that railroad line in the future, but it's a ways out. And until that time, our bus transit operator is stuck in the same traffic as everybody else is along Highway 1. And it's really unfortunate. So just to reiterate how bad the traffic is, next.
Hi, Sarah. You're on mute.
Oh my goodness. Can I share my screen? Or do I have to tell you when to go to the next slide?
This is Brooke. You can either tell me when to go, or I can stop sharing mine if you want to share yours. That's easier.
Okay. I would prefer to share my own if that's okay. And I suppose I'll start over. Hello, everyone. Sorry for this. Share my presentation. Okay, I mentioned Santa Cruz County, how we're situated with Watsonville and Santa Cruz, how severe our congestion is, and how our transit is stuck in the same traffic. And for that reason, we had Assembly Member Mark Stone propose some legislation. This legislation was successfully passed back in 2013. It is now section 148.1 of the Streets and Highways Code. And this legislation allows the transit districts in both Monterey County and Santa Cruz County to operate on the shoulders of, operate buses on the shoulders of major highways with the approval of Caltrans and the CHP. So once the legislation was passed, a feasibility study was conducted. It was between the Monterey County and Santa Cruz County. It was a partnership between the transit districts, TMC, RTC, and Caltrans. And this feasibility study had a couple of conclusions. For Santa Cruz County, it was concluded that inside bus on shoulder operations was not feasible. And the reason for that was because our facility it's already so built out. And in order to have inside shoulder operations, CHP desired a large enforcement area in the median. And that really made it somewhat of a deal breaker because of the cost effectiveness really went down when we had to provide that large enforcement area in the median. And then the other conclusion was that the bus on shoulder facility would be feasible and cost effective if combined with the program of projects that the RTC was already working on. So we had a few projects under development, auxiliary lanes, and what we did at that point was we began the process of combining the bus on shoulder elements into our auxiliary lanes projects. And that really made it a much better project, more multimodal, and really gives a lot of benefit to our transit system. So the next step in combining the bus on shoulder facility into the projects was we had to develop a concept of operations. And my experience with the ConOps is really for an express lane facility. So because there weren't many available in terms of examples, we kind of had to rejigger and create our own standard or methodology on how to prepare this ConOps. But this document was really helpful because it established an operating concept for the facility. It developed the framework for design, implementation, and operation of the facility. And it defined roles and responsibilities of stakeholders. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of stakeholders involved. There's the RTC who's implementing the projects. There's the transit district who's going to be operating the facility. There's Caltrans who owns the state highway. And then there's CHP who's doing the enforcement, which we're partnering with. So this document was really helpful to get all of those kinks out at the early stages. And this is the concept that came out of this process. So we have the auxiliary lanes shown in blue and the bus on shoulder facility shown in the orange color. And so the bus will travel in the auxiliary lane between interchanges, and then it will enter into the shoulder at the off ramp. So it will go through the gore into the shoulder and travel through the interchange in the shoulder. And that allows the bus to bypass traffic. And what we found through our studies is that the auxiliary lanes move slightly faster than the mixed flow lanes. And so there is quite a bit of benefit to having this concept. And just a note, similar to what Brooke was mentioning about the speeds of the buses, our buses only are allowed to travel 15 miles per hour faster than the general purpose lanes. And the maximum speed of these buses is 35 miles per hour. So through the development of these projects, we've had a lot of concerns and kind of knee-jerk reactions to bus on shoulder being a bad thing and it's not safe. But we're not talking about these buses whizzing by at 70 miles per hour. We're talking 35 max and no faster than 15 miles per hour faster than the general purpose lanes. And even though that seems like somewhat of a really incremental benefit, because of the level and severity of the congestion that we have on Highway 1, it really does improve the travel time and reliability of the transit service. And through the ConOps preparation, we came across a couple of challenges, which we were able to overcome. One of the main challenges is the conflict points at the on-ramp. So if you think about you visualize our facility, and the bus is in the auxiliary lane at the off-ramp, there's no conflict because the bus just continues on. But then as on-ramp traffic comes back onto the freeway, there's a potential for that conflict with the bus. And so the way that we overcame that was just static signage. We, in Santa Cruz, we do not have a fancy ramp metering system on our highway. We're pretty bare bones, and we think that as we develop projects in the future to rejigger our interchanges and improve the on-ramps to add ramp metering, that we can have some interconnected system with the bus, and that will definitely be an enhancement to the system. But until that point, we're just talking about warning signs for the on-ramp travelers, as well as training for the bus drivers on how to overcome those conflicts. Another challenge that we identified was 2-lane off ramps. If you think about the conflict at the off ramp, if it was a 2-lane off ramp, there would potentially be that conflict, but luckily we don't have any 2-lane off ramps at our facilities. So that's great. Another future concern that we have is potential congestion in the auxiliary lanes in the future. And our studies show that that won't happen for quite some time, but if it does in the future, we'll have to overcome that. Public awareness, because this is the only type of facility in the area that will be implemented. We definitely have plans to conduct a public awareness campaign, and that we're planning on beginning during construction and then having everything all rolled out and complete and everybody aware of what's happening by the time the facility is operational. And then lastly, enforcement, which we're partnering with CHP on to have some enhanced enforcement up and down the facility. So if you think about, project development in a Caltrans world, there's standards. There's HDM, there's the METCD. Well, there's no standards for bus on shoulder, really. And so we had to go to the federal level, and we follow the FHWA shoulder use guide to develop our signing and pavement marking concept. And we took our concept to the California Traffic Control Device Committee, the CTCDC, similar to how Brooke did for her project. And they approved our concept for experimental use in August of 2019. So here is a exhibit showing our pavement markings and signage. You can see the red colored pavement there on shoulders. It's not for the entire length of the shoulders. It's just for the beginning and end of the facility, as well as signage at the beginning and ending of the facility. We also have some enhanced signage at the beginning. The lower left corner of the exhibit shows that freeway shoulders for buses only sign. That really gets the public's attention on, you're entering this new type of facility. Here's another location on our lawn and our project where we have the signage and pavement markings. And then there was one sign that was added, the emergency stopping only sign. And that was added because CHP requested it, because our facility is really unique because we have that legislation. Our shoulder is still technically a shoulder, and per the Streets and Highways Code and the enforcement and how CHP enforces the facility, they really needed that emergency stopping only sign. And that's a great thing about working with CHP, is that they're very clear and transparent about what they want. And what street and highway code they're enforcing against. And so for that reason, it's been really great working with them. And here on the left side, I've got, this is straight out of our final design plans, the pavement delineation sheets. We have the new Caltrans chevron pavement markings. And then the gray area is the transit bus only red colored pavement. And that's an example on the right side of what it might look like once implemented. So this is a look at our corridor. We have 3 active projects right now. The first project being between Morrissey and Bay Corridor. It's 2 3/4 mile segment, and we are working on RTL of this project as we speak. The second project is in the P80 phase. We're actually going through the environmental review now. It's scheduled to RTL in 2022, which will add another 3 miles. And lastly, the third phase, which will complete the almost 8-mile corridor, is 1.75 miles, and that's just starting off in the P80 phase as well. And here is a really quick little snip video of how it would look. So you can see the bus in the auxiliary lane, and exit. Passes the exit, goes through the door and into the shoulder. And this is at the Park Avenue interchange in Capitola. And so with that, before I take any questions, I just want to give a couple of shout outs to our partners at Caltrans. There were many, many folks at District 5 who helped make this happen. And so I want to thank Louis Duazo and Heidi Borders, who are the project managers for these projects, the environmental lead, Laura Bertena, design lead, Claudia Espino, traffic safety, Roger Barnes, traffic ops, Sam Toe, and of course the executive team at District 5, Mr. Tim Gubbins and Richard Rosales. We really value your partnership, and thank you for all of your hard work on these projects. And another last thank you and shout out is to the California Transportation Commission and their staff. Recently, just on Monday, we heard the good news that they're recommending our projects for funding. So that would fully fund phase 1 and phase 2 of our bus on shoulder project. So we are really excited about that and thankful for their leadership in getting our unique, innovative facility implemented. So thank you. With that, Brooke and I can take any questions that you have.
Yeah, this is Brooke. I'm not seeing any additional questions. So nice job, Sarah. I like your project.
Thanks, Brooke. We actually used your project, the one that was implemented before, as we used a lot or borrowed a lot of your materials early on because it was the first one that moved forward, especially with the CTC DC process. That was a little daunting, but we got through it and used a lot of tips from your project. So thanks for that.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. I know our first attempt didn't go as well as we hoped, but the second time we went back to the CTCDC, we did get it approved. So that was great that someone could learn from our lessons there. Oh, Sarah, it looks like you have a question maybe on how many miles is your project in both directions?
Yeah, so it's the total facility is a little less than 8 miles. So 8 miles in each direction.
Here's a question, Sarah. Did you have to pay Caltrans to maintain the shoulder, or how about CHP enforcement?
Pay Caltrans to maintain the shoulder? What? Yeah, actually, we have to enter into a maintenance agreement with Caltrans. We're still working on negotiating that agreement. And it's a part of the legislation. It was kind of a, Caltrans made sure to include that part of it. So the Santa Cruz Metro will be responsible for the red color payment and the signage, really anything for the operations of that facility. So, but we're hoping to partner with Caltrans on hopefully, they can actually do the work and then we can just work it out on a reimbursement basis, because the transit district, if you can imagine, they're not super equipped to be maintaining a state facility like Highway 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and same with our project here in District 11. SANDAG is going to reimburse us for our maintenance efforts. And so we're entering into an agreement with them on that, as well as they're going to pay for CHP enforcement.
Yeah, we are also working on CHP enforcement agreement to enhance the enforcement on Highway 1. We haven't gotten quite to that point yet. I think you guys are a ways ahead of us in that way. I have a question from Leah. What concerns did the CHP and others have given the lack of ramp metering, and how did you overcome their concerns? So the way that our ramps are, they're very short, they're very non-standard, and for that reason, nobody's really going very fast on the ramps. And we went back and forth about this, and we're several years out from implementing ramp metering on our on-ramps. And if we had to add some sort of infrastructure there, it really would have made it so much less cost effective. And we're really looking for something to implement really quickly and for, the lowest cost possible, biggest bang for your buck, if you will. And we just talked through the concerns with both CHP and Caltrans. And the way we addressed it was through, as I mentioned in my presentation, the static signage, the warning signage at the on-ramps, and then the training of the bus drivers. So to navigate through those conflict points.
Yeah, Sarah, if I could add something to that. A big part of this during the early stages, the feasibility study was, convincing the CHP and Caltrans staff that this was a reasonable thing to do. And bus on shoulder is relatively new in California, but nationally it's been around for quite a long time, particularly in Minnesota. And they have, I think, 150 miles of bus on shoulder lanes in the state. They don't have, any ramp metering, and they've never had any serious incidents. So that kind of experience helped convince people that this was viable. I mean, it would be great if we could have ramp metering and do the same thing San Diego's doing, but as Sarah says, it's just not practical in the short term. And we wanted to get this project going as quickly as possible because the benefits are the greatest before a larger transit solution is put in place. So it was great that both the CHP and District 5 worked with us on that, and they understood that situation.
Sorry, everyone. There is another question from Sun Wen. The shoulder pavement had to be replaced with full depth structural section. Also, shoulders are typically 10 feet wide. So did you have to widen the shoulder to 12 feet and acquire right of way?
Brooke, do you want to take that one, or I can talk about my project?
Yeah, I can answer it as well for my project. No, we did not do full depth structure section on our project. We do have some structure section that we need to replace, but it's not full depth. And then the shoulders are typically 10 feet wide. We did not actually widen any shoulders or acquire the right of way. What we did, since we're converting it to a transit only lane, we reduced the general purpose lane widths so that we could get our 12-feet requirement.
Thanks. Yeah, and for our project, our shoulders were all non-standard anyways. So we had 8-foot shoulders pretty much throughout, and for that reason, we upgraded the shoulders to full depth section, and not just the standard 10-foot typical shoulder width, but we actually went for the 12-foot. So anywhere where we're touching the shoulder and buses will be operating in the shoulder, we upgraded it to 12 feet, and we did not need to have right of way because they were all at the interchanges where it was already built out.
Great. And then the next question from Shanaz. IG no ramp meters. So how do you overcome with the conflict?
Yeah.
This one is directed at you, Sarah, because I have ramp meters at all my locations.
Yeah, and I think I already answered this question from somebody else a little earlier, but it's we just use static signage and train our bus drivers to overcome that conflict point. And once we do implement once we do implement ramp meters on our on-ramp along our corridor, then we'll definitely look at some enhancements, such as having the interconnected, kind of like how some of the fancier bus on shoulder facilities are, but for the time being, just static signage, and that really makes it very cost effective, and it, if they're placed correctly, it's very effective. So we followed, there's several other facilities throughout the state, throughout the country, that have facilities that don't have ramp metering, and I think we leveraged those experiences when we were talking to Caltrans and CHP, and because they really didn't have a history of issues with those conflicts, they granted us the ability to move forward with the static signage and not have the ramp metering. So I don't know if you want to add anything more, Bill?
Yeah, if you think about it, just think about a bus just in the normal traffic lane, in the right-hand lane, approaching a ramp. It's not all that much different to be in that right lane as to be on the shoulder. The bus driver has a clear view of the traffic coming onto the freeway, and they're trained to yield to that traffic. They're not going to try to speed up and get in front of somebody coming onto the freeway. They're going to slow down if they see somebody coming and wait for a gap. And so it's kind of the same driving skill that people have that in normal operations. And the other thing is, Sarah mentioned this before, the speeds that we're talking about are very low. And both the speeds on the mainline freeway, because we don't allow this to happen except when the speeds have dropped below 35 miles per hour. And then secondly, the ramps themselves, the design of them is such that people can't really go very fast on them. So all those factors considered, that we really don't believe there's going to be much of a problem at the ramps.
And I'm interrupting again. So our team actually has the video. If you'd like us to play, I'll have Marissa go on and play that for you.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Marissa. Share your screen. Thank you. And then there's one more question. So are there yield signs or delineation on shoulder for buses? That was from Shanaz Alvi.
No, not for our project. That should be accomplished through the training of the bus operators. Brooke, do you want to answer that for your project?
No, same here. I mean, the only delineation, I guess, we do say buses only. Another question, are you using variable sign system that can be turned on off remotely? I believe the answer on my project is yes, that technically it could be turned on and off remotely.
Yeah, and our project in Santa Cruz doesn't have that type of infrastructure.
And then the operating hours in District 11, while it's considered a transit-only lane 24/7, we're only allowing buses to operate in that lane from 6 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 7 p.m. So just during those peak hours.
Interesting. And ours is actually triggered by congestion, so we didn't limit the time of day, right? Right, Bill?
Right. Exactly. We did not limit it at all, just only when congestion occurs. Even on weekends, it could occur. So.
Well, this was partly in conjunction with what CHP requested, but we also figured traffic wasn't going to be congested enough to warrant buses moving over to that transit-only lane outside the peak hours.
Right. The congestion in this quarter is really severe. And we have INREX data that shows average speeds of 2 miles per hour. So it's very, very severe. And the extent of it is can go from 5 a.m. in the morning till 11 a.m., for example. That's not uncommon. So, but it varies quite a bit by day of week and also by season of the year. So we felt it was a good idea to just, have the lanes available all the time, and it's up to the bus operators following the rules that have been set up to decide when they want to use it.
Right, and I'll just add to that, a lot of people are questioning whether traffic is still bad because of COVID. And right now, traffic is back to the normal, really poor congestion that we experienced pre-COVID. So people are stuck in traffic right now, and they have been since we started opening up back in June.
Here's a question, Sarah. Are there any measures other than CHP enforcement to prevent motorists from piggybacking behind the bus to bypass traffic on the main lane?
No, not really.
Yeah, same
Except
here.
to bluff.
Yeah, same here in District 11. It's really CHP enforcement, and then we have a strong public outreach campaign where we're trying to make sure people understand that this transit-only lane is a demonstration project, and it is just for rapid vehicles, MTS vehicles.
Right.
I think this one's for you too, Sarah. The slides show a backup on the off-ramps. What will the bus drivers do if the backup reaches the shoulder on any facility?
Yeah, that's a challenge that we may have to face, and hopefully it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, I would envision, depending on the time of day, it's probably faster to just wait out the off-ramp traffic than it would be to try to merge back into the general purpose lanes, just because of the way that this, signal with the local street works at the interchange. But yeah, we're definitely looking at that as a potential concern in the future.
And well, the bus operators will be trained when they see that occurring to actually not get into the shoulder or not try to. They'll just stay in the general purpose lane, at least until they pass the off ramp where the backup's occurring. Then they could merge over, but it may not make any sense at that point. So what they would do, normally they'd be in the auxiliary lane, but if it's backed up into the auxiliary lane, they would just move over into the next lane with general traffic and go around the backup, just really like anybody else would if they were in that lane. So the disadvantage of it is we lose some of the travel time savings benefit, but safety is always the number one priority. So.
Like there was one other question. Did you have any problems with the lane, with any vehicles on the shoulder due to an emergency? My project is still in construction, so we haven't technically it's not in operation yet, so I haven't had to deal with that yet.
Right, us too. We're not even to construction yet, but we will be next year. However, this was kind of addressed a little bit in my presentation, is that if there is a breakdown, that those motorists can still use the shoulder, emergency vehicles and breakdowns and that sort of thing. And we added the emergency only signage that the CHP had requested for that reason, just to reiterate that it's still available for emergencies. We didn't want to discourage people from using the outside shoulder for emergencies. So if a bus comes to an emergency situation on the shoulder, they would just merge back into the general purpose lanes and go around that emergency. So.
And then what about drainage during rainfall? Are you guys allowed to operate in the shoulder when it's raining?
I think we are, right, Bill?
Yes. So the second part of the question says usually the shoulders are flooded. So if the shoulder area was flooded again, just like with an emergency vehicles or a vehicle stopped in the lane, the operators would be trained just to use the general purpose lane and avoid the shoulder. The other thing to note is that the operator is in charge. So if they feel uncomfortable about using the shoulder, they don't have to, and for whatever reason. And so again, safety is the number one priority.
Great. And here in District 11, they're not allowed to operate when it's raining or the shoulders are wet. The buses are not allowed. I think that's all the questions. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and thank you, Sarah, for sharing your time with us.
Thank you, Brooke. That was really also educational for me to hear about your project, and best of luck in the implementation and operations.